Today in Conversations That Convert, we'll be introducing the results of the Association of Professional Builders annual State of the Residential Construction Industry Survey. You're going to want to tune in, hear directly from Russ Stevens from the APB on what builders are thinking, just like you, what's most important, and also what you may want to consider doing here as part of your overall strategy for 2024. Let's get started.
Welcome to Conversations That Convert. Every week, we'll spend about 10 to 15 minutes tackling relevant lead generation, marketing, and sales topics for remodelers, home improvement companies, and home builders. Conversations That Convert is brought to you by Builder Lead Converter, your perfect sales assistant. And now, here's Rick and Diana.
Hey everyone, welcome to Conversations That Convert. Diana is off today, but I have a very special guest. This is Russ Stevens from the Association of Professional Builders, direct from Australia. Russ, good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, Rick. Good to see you again. It's been a long time.
Been a long time, yeah, all of about a week. We're recording this right after the International Builders Show, of which Russ came over and brought a team, and so we got to partake in 70-some thousand builders and designers descending to Las Vegas and talk everything about home building for a week. And the exciting news is the annual State of the Residential Construction Industry Survey is just coming out. I think it's you guys are launching it this week, as a matter of fact. So we're going to talk about what builders are thinking and what you guys discovered, and also maybe some strategies you want to implement. Before we do that, though, Russ, give us a little background on Association of Professional Builders and how you got to be where you are today.
Yeah, sure, Rick. So the Association of Professional Builders is a business coaching company dedicated to improving the residential construction industry for both builders and consumers. So everything we do has those two factors in mind, and it's driven by the belief that builders deserve to be earning a lot more money than they're currently earning, but also that consumers deserve a better service. And we believe we can achieve that goal through systemization. So we are helping residential home builders to systemize their businesses, to make them more efficient, more profitable, of course, but also to deliver a better service to their clients.
One of the things, Russ, that you do, which is I think unique in the industry, is every year you put together this State of the Residential Construction Industry Survey. And so tell us a little bit what that entails and the different areas that you cover in that survey.
Yeah, well, this report is now into its fourth year, and like you say, we are just releasing the 2024 report right now. It's hot off the press, and what we do is we go out to residential builders, I should say owners of residential building companies, and ask them a lot of questions, collect a lot of data about their marketing, about their sales, operations, training, remuneration, financials, all aspects of their building company. In fact, we asked them around about 118 questions, I think it was this year. So as you can imagine, that is a massive commitment for a builder to make, to answer all those questions, and quite frankly, they wouldn't do it unless there was a tangible benefit for spending that time and answering that information. And I think the real benefit for builders is it kind of opens up gaps in their business, and this, when they take part in the report, it also allows them to benchmark their building company against other residential building companies. And this year we had 1,800 builders take part, so obviously that's a phenomenal amount of data that we've been able to sift through and cross-reference.
How many different countries, Russ, do you guys gather information from?
4 countries, so a large amount of builders in the US, but also from Canada, Australia, and New Zealand as well. And we break the data up by country. So, in the vast majority of cases, the problems are very, very similar, but there are a few exceptions where things are very different. Safety, for instance, is one thing that springs to mind, where some countries are more advanced than others. But 4 countries with the data broken down by country and overall data as well.
So I'm always interested in the marketing end of things, and I wrote a commentary actually for the report. But let's talk a little bit about some high level things that you've seen. This is the 4th year that you have done this. And what have you seen from an evolution, or what's different in 2024 than maybe you saw even in 2023 or 22?
Yeah, there were 3 main things that stood out to us in the most recent data. First and foremost, optimism was back at the end of 2023, and that was great to see. And that was reflected in what builders were looking to do in terms of growing their revenue, but probably more importantly, in terms of growing their net margins and also increasing their salaries as well. So that came through very strongly in the data that builders were feeling a lot more confident about the year ahead. Another thing that stood out, and sadly, this has kind of been on our radar for the last few years through the COVID boom, and that marketing remains a missed opportunity for the vast majority of building companies. And it's probably become a bigger pain point because of the boom that we experienced during COVID, where leads and sales were very, very easy to get. Consumers were queuing up to sign with a building company, and builders didn't have to try too hard in order to generate opportunities and even to close contracts. I think a lot of builders forgot how to overcome objections over the last few years. The objections manual kind of went in a drawer and has been collecting dust ever since. So there's some skills there that need to be relearned, I would say. And probably the third thing that stood out, and again, this has been a bit of an ongoing theme, is the amount of builders that are looking at inaccurate financial data. It was something like 92% of residential building companies are looking at incorrect financial data, which means they are making decisions based on incorrect data. And I think, to be fair, almost half of builders understood that they probably knew that they were looking at inaccurate data because they didn't know how to calculate the work in progress figure. But the same amount, something like 46%, believed they did know how to make this calculation or do this calculation. Therefore, they did not realize that the information they were looking at was incorrect, because the guys that said they did know how to do this very important calculation, we then tested them on the following question, and we found a staggering percentage of those guys were doing the calculation wrong, which meant their financials were wrong as well. So that's maybe a bigger concern, because I think it's one thing knowing that your accounts or the financials are not correct, and you probably shouldn't be making decisions based off what you're seeing. But if you believe they are correct, then the decisions you're making are very, very dangerous. So that's probably a bigger concern.
I'm going to step on a limb and take a guess that is understanding the difference between markup and margin.
No, interestingly enough, that has improved over the years and continues to improve. It's actually the work in progress accounting adjustment. This is the big Achilles heel within our industry. Very few builders, and probably even fewer accountants, I would say. Almost all general CPAs don't know how to calculate this figure correctly, simply because of the way they've been trained on it, and the terminology we use kind of confuses them. So that's the Achilles heel. That's the big issue in our industry right now.
Sure. Okay. Well, good to know. I'm going to switch back to the marketing side of things a little bit, because I did review the numbers and the comparison between 23 and 24. So I guess I'll throw a couple of thoughts out there that I found. Number one marketing challenge for builders is generating high quality leads, and that was almost 50%. just about 46%. 1 out of 2 builders said, hey, this is my number one marketing challenge. And then the other thing that I saw that was interesting was just having enough leads, period, was, I think, the number 2 issue. When you combine the 2 together, it was almost 6 out of 10 builders said that they're not getting enough high quality leads nor enough leads. And then there was a third item that stood out. 12% of respondents said that they are considering advertising this year in 2024 that they did not do in 2023. So we kind of took that and ran with it when I was doing some presentations at the show as to, what would that look like as far as if you were going to invest in your marketing, where's the best place to find those high quality leads. And the other thing I have learned over the years, Russ, which is interesting, is that every builder wants to have that ready, willing, and able lead fall in their lap. Like, here's my plans. I have the land purchased. I'm just ready to go. I just need a price to go. And so we call that the ready, willing, and able lead. And more often than not, those leads, they're not a good buyer. They normally, have already gotten a proposal from a different builder, already have a relationship established with a different builder, and they're just trying to validate the price they've been given by the different builder. So that oftentimes builders will get used by giving them that price, and then they get all excited that, hey, this is ready to go, and then the person says, thanks so much, Russ, really appreciate you reaffirming my decision to go with your competitor, but you've been lovely to work with, and have a nice day. And so we talked about high quality leads are really developed over time, just like a good employee, is that you develop them over time as you establish trust and value, and then when that lead is ready to contact a builder, that you're top of mind, and they look to you as being the local expert. So I think that's you talk about an art lost as far as handling objections. I think that's another art lost, is just really managing a database and developing those high quality leads and being able to pull sales out of your database even when the phone isn't ringing or your market's not hot. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it was interesting because, like you say, the number one challenge in marketing was generating high quality leads once again. But what was also interesting was the number one challenge in sales was also generating high quality leads. So, like I said, the problem in sales was being pushed back to marketing. Yeah. So, yeah, that was quite interesting. But like you say, the big issue with a lot of residential building companies is that they are attracting people that have already gone through the design process, and basically you're being price checked, aren't you? Especially if you're quoting for free, which is a disaster. You're going to get price checked all the time when you do that, and you're just wasting your time and your resources. So in that respect, the business model needs to be fixed up for the building company. You can't be a building company in today's market. You've got to be a design and build company. And like you alluded to there, Rick, that's when your marketing attracts people before they've gone into the latter part of the cycle. You're going to get them before they go into the design process. You're going to build that relationship. And then by the time they are looking for a price on that plan, you're going to be the only one. They might throw it out to someone else for a price check, but you're in the box seat. And what we find as well is that they don't even push it out to someone else when you've done this part right, because they've no reason to. Even if someone come up with a cheaper price, they're not going to go with them because they trust you and your process.
They trust you, they see the value, and if they feel like you're the best builder to solve their housing problem, they're going to go with you. And they're making a large investment. And I think I statistically wise, I think I remember reading, this is from Brian Tracy, but he quoted that 87% of all sales, the decision is made not based on a low price. 87%.
That is so important. Yeah, absolutely. And we've done a lot of research on this as well. Because years ago we used to provide a contract signing service for builders where we would collate all the information, ensuring that the contract had everything in it that had been discussed, and it helped to stop builders getting caught out. That service was kind of superseded by products like Co-Construct and Builder Trend that handled that pre-construction process very well and made sure everything was documented. But when we were doing that, we would always ask the client why they decided to sign with this particular builder. And we never came across a client that said they were the cheapest price. It was always because, and they always said as well that I had a cheaper price from another builder, but I went with this guy because, he provided more documentation, more information, the service was good, the communication was good, blah, blah, blah. There was a plethora of reasons why they chose this builder, but it was never price. Now, you ask, 100 building companies, why they lost their last job, and the vast majority will say they lost it on price to another competitor if they're not following the APB process, that is. But it's interesting, that disconnect, isn't it? Our perception, and like you just backed up with facts from Brian Tracy as well.
Well, I think what's interesting is, so we have this, I call it a value proposition, right? So value as an equation is price performance divided by quality perception. So it's the perception of the lead, of what they're getting in exchange for the money you're asking. And so what happens is the builders always put a lot of emphasis on the price. So they feel like if a job is lost, it's on the price. But really, the emphasis should be on the quality perception, the value proposition, that, if that lead does not feel like they're getting the most value from the builder, they're going to default and they're going to say, well, you're too expensive. Well, the question should be asked then, well, why? Why do you feel you're too expensive? Why don't you feel like you're getting the value you're after? Why don't you feel like this builder is really meeting your needs that you're looking for when you're picking, whether it's a remodeler or a home builder? And so that leads me to my next question, because I get this a lot, where you get a builder that they get to the point in their business and they realize there's a problem. I need to do something to change. But they can go and they can focus on the front end, like say, I just need to generate some better marketing, and then I'll figure it out once I get leads. Or they can say, I'm going to start with my internal processes and systems, focus on efficiencies and processes and profitability. From an APB standpoint, put on your coach hat here, where do you like to start a builder? Do you like to work on the front end marketing first, or do you like to work on the internal systems and try to fix that first before you go after marketing?
Yeah, look, this is a great point, because pre-COVID and now we're into the post-COVID period as well, builders tend to come to us because they want to generate more leads, because if they generate more leads, they're going to generate more sales, which means more revenue, which means more profit. So that is why they kind of come to us. But we always start with the financials, because in a large percentage of building companies, if they were to scale up, they're going to go broke quicker because they're not charging enough. That's the fundamental problem. But a lot of builders don't realize that because their financials aren't accurate for all the problems that I kind of mentioned earlier. So our coaches always start by looking at their current financials and getting those fixed up, i.e. by putting the work in progress accounting adjustment into their accounts. Now, once we do that, a builder has the realization that they are not earning as much as they thought they were earning. They might have hundreds of thousands, or even maybe it's just tens of thousands in their bank account, but cash is not profit and profit is not cash. So once we do these calculations and they understand the real position they're in, that actually leads to a mindset change. I mean, we talk a lot in business about mindset. This is one of the most powerful things we've been able to do for builders to change their mindset, because when they realize they've been literally working for nothing, they get a bit angry, but then they get determined to charge their worth. And that leads to a very different attitude towards pricing. We also have a very different model for pricing jobs as well. We don't use the traditional model of adding a markup to the cost of sales. We factor in the fixed expenses and the timeline of the job, so they're adding a net profit. But this transforms the way builders price jobs. Now, I will say that just because you should be charging more doesn't mean you can suddenly, add another 20% to your contract and the client's going to sign. In some cases they will, surprisingly enough. But margins are linked to marketing, and this all comes down to the law of supply and demand. So you do have to be showing value, like you said. and you've got to be generating a lot more demand for your services than you can supply, because then that leads into another strategy that I know you've talked a lot about in the past. We call it construction slots. I think you call it slot selling, Rick.
Slot selling, production slot selling.
Yeah, that's what leads to high margins as well. It's a very simple strategy, very, very powerful. So yeah, to answer your questions, yeah, builders, we talk about what they want, but then we start with what they need to protect them, really, because builders can lose a lot of money by scaling up on the wrong margins.
Yeah, and I was hoping you'd say that answer. I knew the answer to the question, Russ, but I had to ask you anyway.
We're on the same page with a lot of this stuff. I've seen a lot of your presentations, Rick, and they're great.
Yeah, the numbers don't lie, right? I mean, it's like, I talked about that today with somebody else when we talked about, how the home is built. A lot of builders, build the home because it's their baby, and they build it because they want to build it this way and they believe in this. But if the consumer looks at that home and say, you know what, Russ, that's beautiful, but I don't really see any value in it. So you know what, I'm not willing to pay for it, and therefore, where does it come out of? Well, it comes out of the profit, right? So the numbers don't lie, and I love that, because you once you get your numbers down and you figured it out, then you go like, oh wow, this is what I'm really making. This is what what am I worth? And really, builders, I mean, you can be the best builder in the world. And I just overheard this conversation at the Builders Show, one of my presentations. This guy was talking about how he was such a great builder, but he has competitors that he felt were like a lower tiered builder were getting all the leads. It's like, yeah, they're great marketers. They don't have to be great builders. They can be great marketers. But when you are a great marketer and you can back it up with a great internal system and deliver that product, which is really that end result, that experience, you're offering the customer the lifestyle they so desire to live in their home. It's like, man, once you have that down, and then you can really take market share, and you can really, make a huge impact in your business and get to the point where now my business can run without me having to be there every single waking moment, and I have a better quality of life too. Because that's another issue I see a lot too, where builders just come and say, I'm working 60 hours a week, I'm not making any money. Why am I in this business?
It's a sad fact, isn't it, that in this world, the best product doesn't always win. It's a good product with a great marketing strategy will always be a great product with an average marketing strategy. And that may not seem fair, but that's the reality of the world that we're in. So in order to succeed in business, we have to be good at marketing.
The other thing I wanted to just touch on a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, is the accountability factor when you're working with a coach. Because I see, you see this too, I see it a lot, is that a builder decides like, hey, I want to make a change. And then they start off and their guns blazing, and we're going to do this. And then all of a sudden life gets busy and life gets in the way, and they kind of just fall off. But when you have a coach that you meet with day in and day out, and you have KPIs that you have to report, and you have those numbers, and you're reviewing it, and you have this accountability partner, it's amazing the impact a coach can make. But talk a little bit more about that and your philosophy on coaching and aligning a builder with a professional coach, and what impact that will make with that builder.
Yeah, accountability is a massive part of coaching, because it's not just the fact that you arrive at that meeting, you're going to be asked about all the things that you said you were going to do. It's the week leading up to that meeting, it's coming. That motivates you to get things done, which leads to progress. And I guess one of the sad things is that we see so many builders, we have 3 levels of coaching. We have our entry level group coaching, where they access our systems, and they get to access everything and do it at their own pace. Mm-hmm. And a lot of guys don't take the next step, which is to work directly with a coach, because they believe they can do it themselves. They've got all the solutions here, all the answers. They just need to do it. But unfortunately, like we all know, they're not actually going to be disciplined enough to do what needs to be done to get them to the goal that they've set themselves, in a year or 3 years, etc. And then they fall into what we call opportunity cost. And opportunity cost is the cost of not doing something. So, if you were to put in this great marketing strategy within 2 weeks and start generating, great leads from there on after, if that takes you 6 weeks or maybe even 6 months, the gap, that period of time is the opportunity cost. And when you calculate how much business you've lost, that's a lot of money. And it actually pales into insignificance the amount that you would pay to be held to account by a coach that, not only can make sure that you're doing what you need to be doing in order to reach your goals, but they'll also keep you on the right path, because there's forks in the road all the time when it comes to what should I be working on? Should I start with my marketing? Should I get my financials straight first? Or is maybe my sales process broken? The coach, because they deal with data, they are looking at your metrics compared to the rest of the industry. They know exactly where the biggest problem is. Yep. And it's never, in our experience, where the builder thinks it is. So they'll go straight to that problem and fix that. And when that's fixed, that bottleneck is fixed, they will know exactly where the next problem is. And again, it's never where the builder think it is. A lot of the time, the builders want to keep working on the thing they just fixed because they now feel comfortable, but we have to pull them out their comfort zone and go and work on another part of the business. So that's why coaching is so powerful. And it's the reason why all top athletes have a coach, why all top business people have a coach. It's that level of guidance and accountability.
Yeah, exactly. And I had a client, mutual client of ours, and Clint is his coach. And he just said, you know what? I just got it built into my budget. He goes, I'm just going to have Clint as my coach because I need it. I realize it. And it's just, if I'm going to continue to my upward trajectory in my business, I'm going to have a coach. And I thought, wow, what healthy attitude. He completely gets it. And he understands it that, if I'm going to invest whatever, every dollar I invest in coaching, I'm going to get a tenfold return on that. And not only do I get that return, but now I've got accountability, as like he says, I want to grow. Because you're right, as a business evolves, what was the problem one day? Yeah, you can resolve it, but all of a sudden something else is going to pop up when you grow again. And actually this person, speak of the devil, as far as a year ago when he started, it was getting the right leads, having the right processes and systems. So talk to him a year later, after setting up a system for him and working with Clint for the last year. And now his call was, I'm too busy. I need to hire somebody now, so now it's like, I got to add staff. I got to get that key person in place, and of course that's a new problem that you didn't have when you're just starting out. You're doing everything yourself and you don't have the overhead or the cash flow to be able to hire that. Well, now he does. And so, you move on to the next problem.
Yeah. And that's a good point as well, because there's another key metric that our coaches look at, and that is workflow. And that is basically the difference between the value of contracts signed and the value of work completed. And the balance left over is workflow. And that is like guaranteed revenue. Now, that figure in itself isn't overly significant, but it is a good guide as to like the guaranteed revenue coming in over a period of time. But what is important is when you measure that figure monthly and you watch the trend, because if that figure starts declining, the coach will be jumping onto it and actually looking to scale down the fixed expenses of a building company to ensure they remain profitable, because they are effectively going to be overstaffed. But in the example you mentioned, they'll be spotting very early that the resources for the building company need to be scaled up so that you don't get into that situation where all of a sudden you're burning out because you've been so successful in your marketing and sales that you're now working 60, 70 hours a week. They will be looking at that a lot earlier and getting the recruitment process firing well before you think you actually need these people on board, which then gives you an opportunity to attract the right people and get them trained properly.
So Russ, one more question here, two more questions before we wrap up, and we'll tell everyone how to get a copy of the 2024 report. So the first question is, I'm going to go back to slot selling, or what you discussed, and so more of a question and a statement, because I ask builders this all the time, like, have you heard of slot selling? Do you understand what this is? And a lot of custom builders have not heard of it. A lot of remodeling companies haven't heard of it. And so I explained to them very simply, I say, well, normally the way you're running your business is you're letting marketing and sales dictate production. What we're doing with slot selling is we're going to let your production capabilities dictate marketing and sales. And even though it's not an exact science and there are things that are floating around, but I think what I want everyone builder to understand is that scarcity creates urgency. And that's the whole point behind production slot selling. Number one, understanding what your capabilities are. But number two, when you call to talk to a lead and you ask them, hey, Russ, how soon do you want to be living in and enjoying your new space? And they say, oh, well, we have a graduation party that we want to have it ready for 9 months from now. Now you can work backwards. You can say, well, we'd have to start the project by such and such a time. And in order to do that, you would need to do this as part of our sales process, make this commitment. Otherwise, we will not be able to hit that date. Should I give it to you, or I have 3 more leads that I'm talking to? Should I give it to them? Your slot date. And that's what's so powerful about it is that now I can slide them in there, and now I can build a backlog and get people, targeting that slot date. The other thing that I've seen that it really helps is giving people that end goal for getting selections done, getting design completed. Because otherwise, there's some people that will just lag in design forever, and it screws up production schedules and really control builders into a tizzy, if you will. But that's just one thing I want to add there. Words of wisdom. So any builder that's listening to this right now, that's going to look at their report and they're thinking, wow, I want to make some changes to my business. What are some words of wisdom you would offer based on sort of the results of what you saw in the report and also, your current clients?
Well, I guess there's 2 very important things. First of all, I would urge builders to remember the mantra, and that is that margins are linked to marketing. The data in this latest report clearly demonstrates that the key percentage that needs to be reinvested into a building company is 3% in terms of their marketing and advertising. And the building companies that invest 3% of their revenue into their marketing and advertising have the highest net margin. So even when you compare them to a building company that thrives, I would say, in their perception on referrals, and they're either not spending anything at all or spending very little, the guys that are spending 3% still have higher net margins. So even though they're spending 3% more than the other company, they're still beating them in terms of net profit. And that's all because of supply and demand. So that's number one. Number two, I'd say, is you've got to have a plan. If you don't have a plan, you've got a plan to fail. So get that business plan sorted out and start executing the plan, because otherwise you're just shooting from the hip, and you'll probably advertise when you're desperate, and you'll probably turn off your marketing when things are booming, like we saw during COVID. And that is no way to run any business, let alone a building company with such a long sales cycle. So yeah, two key pieces of advice I would say for builders there to make sure they jump onto.
If a builder wants to know more about the Association of Professional Builders, I'm gonna, if you're listening to this, you won't be able to see it, but if you're watching the video, I'm throwing up the website there. But how can they get a hold of you, Russ, or what do you suggest they do?
Well, I think we can put a link in the show notes to the latest State of the Residential Construction Industry report, which is a free PDF download. So your listeners are welcome to download that and then reference where they are in their own building company against what's happening, across the rest of the country. And if you're maybe just listening to this and you don't have access to the link, you can type in SORCI, SORCI, which is State of the Residential Construction Industry report. So SORCI report, and it will come up with a link to download. So either way, you're going to get the information that's going to help you to benchmark exactly where you are with your own residential building company. Well
said, and good words of wisdom there. So thank you so much for joining us here today. It's always a pleasure to have you on and get an update on what is going on. And we appreciate you getting up early and taking the time to record this. So we'll put the link below that Russ was talking about wherever you're watching this video. You'll be able to see the link below to download that report where you can benchmark your peers and learn a little bit more about the APB, Association of Professional Builders. So for my brothers and sisters in Christ, may the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you all always. We'll see you next time on Conversations That Convert.